Hi, my name is Tikwittee. Let's check out this location. The Inca Empire lasted only a little more than a century, but during that time, the Inca built roads, irrigated the desert, and created incredible architecture. Even today, a razor blade cannot be inserted between some of the stones at Machu Picchu. All this was done without knowledge of the wheel, iron, or the written word. They didn't even have a Digi-Sketch. The word Inca means children of the sun, and the Inca worshipped the sun god Inti. Their festivals included animal sacrifices and prayers for a good harvest. Archaeological remains suggest that women played an important role in Inca religion, perhaps as high priestesses. The mountain city of Machu Picchu is now named for a nearby mountain peak, but the original name is unknown. Machu Picchu, which may have served as a religious sanctuary, was a potent symbol of the Incas' power until it was abandoned in the 16th century in the face of Spanish invaders. The city was lost in the thick jungle wilderness until its rediscovery in 1911. Once a stronghold of the proud Inca Empire, today Peru is a modern South American nation evolving from totalitarianism into democracy. Built along the Andes, it holds some of South America's highest peaks. While you're here, keep your eyes peeled for potatoes, which can grow at altitudes up to 14,000 feet. So long!
Bienvenido, viajero. En México, visita las numerosas ruinas de la cultura maya.
¿Qué pasa? I've been itching to explore Chichen Itza. The imagery of this terrace in Chichen Itza captures the fierce nature of the Toltec people who built it. 4 stairways lead up the platform, each one guarded by a feathered serpent. The walls are lined with images of eagles and tigers, the symbols of the Toltec civilization. At the entrance to the ball court is a small temple with pillars that depict the creation of the world by the rain god, showing how important water was on the Yucatan Peninsula. This may explain why the nearby sacred well has been a center of pilgrimage for centuries. A variety of offerings, including human sacrifices, have been tossed into the green waters at the bottom of the well. The ball court is an ancient stone sports arena 150 meters long. Its acoustics are so good that a person speaking at one end can be clearly heard at the other. At one end of the court is a stone ring through which players attempted to throw a ball. The captain of each team had plenty of incentive to win, since losing the game meant losing his head. The warlike Toltecs invaded Mayan territory during the 10th century AD. The Toltecs, who were expert architects, took over the abandoned city and continued to expand it for the next 300 years, adding the Great Pyramid of El Castillo. The Mayan civilization remains a mystery to modern scholars. Their 4th century civilization was quite advanced. They made mathematical discoveries and precise solar calculations, all without a calculator. The Maya built the city of Chichen Itza from the 4th to the 10th century AD, but then abandoned it. So long!
el vuelo 916 está a punto de salir para Guatemala. Que disfrute del vuelo.
Hola, I'm tickled you've asked about Tikal. The central Acropolis forms the south side of Tikal's Great Plaza. Unlike the other structures, this one is made up of palaces rather than temples. As the Mayan rulers' wealth and power expanded, the central Acropolis expanded with it, forming a labyrinth of courtyards and stairways. Like most Mayan temples, Temple 1 is a terraced pyramid. Its summit towers 45 meters above the Great Plaza and contains the tomb of its builder. Because of the many cat images carved in its facade, this building is also called the Temple of the Great Jaguar. Here in the Great Plaza, we're surrounded by Temple 1, Temple 2, the Northern Acropolis, and the Central Acropolis. Building continued in this area for over 1,000 years. Around the edges of the Great Plaza, sculpted wall carvings tell the history of kings. The Northern Acropolis covers 2.5 acres. Many layers were added onto this religious complex so that about 100 buildings are buried in its mass. And that's not all that's buried there. Beneath the lowest level of buildings lies the tomb of a priest, whose 9 attendants were killed and buried at his side. Tikal is one of the largest Mayan cities yet discovered. We're not sure if Tikal was a city for the common people or a religious center reserved for priests, but it does include temples used for human sacrifice. After building Tikal for over 1,000-year period, the Maya seem to have disappeared for unknown reasons. Here we see Temple 2, which was built around 700 AD. The stairway to the top is guarded by 2 grotesque faces, which help give this structure its nickname, the Temple of the Masks. So long!
Buenos días. El vuelo 707 está llegando a Chile.
Welcome to Easter Island. Most of these moai sculptures on Easter Island were made in the 14th and 15th centuries, but there's archaeological evidence that smaller statues had already been set up in the 8th century, and a few had been dated even earlier. Whew, it takes a level head to keep all these dates straight. These stone giants weigh an average of 16 tons, and some of them stand 12 miles from the quarry. They probably didn't just get up and walk there, but that's what the legends say. Easter Islanders talk of a special priest who ordered the statues to walk, but modern archaeologists suspect that the statues were pulled by rope along rounded logs. Taking hints from some unfinished statues, we know that the workers carved the moai as if they were lying on their backs. Once the carving was detached from the surrounding rock, the finishing touches were added. Engraving patterns were cut into the statue's back, and the moai was painted red or white and given white coral eyes. You can still find about 300 moai statues lying in ancient quarries, some barely roughed out and others completely finished. The workers seem to have simply dropped their tools and left their work incomplete. Maybe they just lost their heads. These Moai statues probably honored ancestors or high-ranking tribal chiefs. They were erected on platforms where the Easter Islanders gathered during community and religious ceremonies. The great mystery of Easter Island is, who built these statues? Well, I'll tell you. I don't know. No one does. A civilization existed here as early as 380 AD, but we don't know where its citizens came from. Since their style of housing was similar to that of people in South America, it's possible that the original builders came from Peru. So long! Glad you called. I could write a whole column on Greece. On the north side of the Acropolis stands the Erechtheum. It is asymmetrical and built on 2 levels and features sanctuaries to Athena, Poseidon, and King Erechtheus, hence its name. On the north side you can see its marble roof supported by statues of women called the Caryatids, a fine example of women holding things together. Personally, I prefer to study ancient relics, but Greece is also a thriving modern country. Athens has all the makings of a modern capital, including the smog that often obscures the Parthenon. On certain days, cars are banned from the capital to reduce pollution and preserve the monuments. Here, near the entrance to the Acropolis, stands the tiny temple of Athena Nike. Nike is a reference to Athena's aspect as a goddess of war and victory. Athena, also the goddess of wisdom, was represented in the temple by a winged statue, but the statue's wings were clipped to keep Athena from fleeing the city. The Greek word Acropolis means city at the top, and the Acropolis in Athens tops my list of famous locations. The summit has served as both a fortress and a temple since 3000 BC. In the 5th century BC, the Greek statesman Pericles had several buildings erected here, including the famous Parthenon, dedicated to the goddess Athena. Athens became the heart of Greece's golden age. Here were laid the foundations of modern democracy, Western philosophy, and even the concept of theater. The Parthenon is considered the finest example of classical Greek architecture and was built between 447 and 432 BC. Although it's now a treasured historical site, the Parthenon wasn't always so well cared for. A gold and ivory statue of Athena was destroyed centuries ago. In 1687, the Turks used the Parthenon as an ammunition depot, and it exploded, blowing the roof off the whole place. So long!
Il volo 415 è in partenza per l'Italia.
Buongiorno! Let's roam around Roma. Italy has influenced European civilization for over 2,000 years. From this narrow, boot-shaped peninsula have sprung the Roman Empire, the Italian Renaissance, and the Catholic Church. The cities of Florence, Rome, and Venice contain some of the most celebrated art and architecture in the world, not to mention the food. This small church near the Roman Forum is named for a 15th century saint who cared for the poor in Rome. It is one of the many beautiful ancient churches that grace the city. Emperor Hadrian built the Temple of Venus in Rome to be the largest temple in the city. Although Venus was the Roman goddess of love, Hadrian loved Greek architecture and used Greek-style columns to surround the two shrines. Today, the Temple of Venus in Rome is in ruins. I guess you could say neither love nor the Roman Empire could last forever. In the distance, you can see the Arch of Titus, which spans the Sacred Way in Rome and celebrates the victories of Titus and his father Vespasian. Its artwork shows the Romans conquering Jerusalem and carrying off the great menorah. The roots of Roman history go back 3,000 years. First ruled by kings, it evolved into a republic, and finally into the greatest empire the world has ever known. When Constantine became the first Christian emperor in 330 AD, he moved the imperial seat to Constantinople. Although no longer a secular capital, Rome became a religious one, and still today contains the Vatican, the center of the Catholic Church. Here we see the triumphal Triple Arch of Constantine, which was built in the 4th century AD. It seems the emperor decided to pillage sculptures from earlier periods of Roman history to decorate the monument. Built around 75 AD, the Colosseum symbolizes the extravagance of the Roman Empire and proves that modern sports arenas don't compare to ancient Rome. Seating 50,000 people, the Colosseum offered gladiator duels and wild animal hunts in its sand-covered arena. A complex system of underground tunnels housed the workers, slaves, and exotic animals that provided spectacles for the privileged citizens of Rome. So long! You called and I ran right over. Let's check out Persepolis. If memory serves, the Hall of 100 Columns has, about 100 columns. These columns supported the roof of this vast throne room, which could hold 10,000 people. Here, during ceremonies, people would come from across the Persian Empire to lay treasure at the feet of the King of Kings. The city of Persepolis, which was built around 518 BC by King Darius I, was the spiritual center of the Persian Empire. The Persians borrowed artistic styles from the cultures they conquered in order to create the city's inspiring architecture. In 330 AD, Alexander the Great sacked the city, and Persepolis was burned to the ground. For centuries, the great stairway leading to the audience hall was buried under ash and dirt, which kept it well preserved, thank goodness. Reliefs carved along its walls show the people of 23 nations bringing tribute to the Persian king. The Apadana was the main audience hall of King Darius, and it took royal power to new heights. The columns that supported the Apadana were 20 meters tall, twice as high as those in the Hall of 100 Columns. The buildings in Persepolis had wooden ceilings, and many of the columns supporting them were topped with elaborate designs of two-headed creatures such as horses or bulls. On each creature's back rested the massive wooden beams of the palace roof. Those Persian sculptors really put their backs into their work. The Tripylon was a small central palace leading to a monumental passageway. The artwork on its walls depicts the Persian king Darius, seated on a throne beneath the winged symbol of the Persian god Ahura Mazda. So long! Hi, I can tell you a lot about Angkor Wat. The Khmer people ruled Cambodia for centuries and built their enormous capital, or Angkor, beginning in the 9th century A.D. The Khmer abandoned Angkor in the 14th century, and these ruins were overgrown by jungle until their rediscovery in 1861. Angkor Wat was originally built to honor the Hindu gods, but around the 13th century A.D., a Khmer king decided that the Hindu gods had abandoned him, so he introduced Buddhism to Angkor, and Angkor Wat became a Buddhist shrine. Now, don't you feel enlightened? You want to know about Wat? A Wat is a temple, and Angkor Wat is the largest temple in the Angkor complex. Surrounded by a wide moat that symbolizes the oceans of the world, its 5 central towers represent the peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical home of the Hindu gods. So long!